This video is my response to frequent comments where people are discouraged about building an Atmos mix room because of the expense. It's true that an optimum mixing room costs a lot of money, and for good reason. But I think of it like the 80-20 rule. Some things are more critical than others. The trick is to know which is which. I want to mix music in Atmos, both my own recordings and for other people. I realized right away that headphones wouldn't cut it. I would need speakers. So I put together a 714 system here in this room that didn't break the bank and is good enough for me to hear what I'm doing. I'm really happy with it. Now there are three potential cost barriers. The speakers themselves, they're expensive and you need a lot of them, a speaker management system of some kind, and still more gear to be able to listen to Atmos from streaming services. But with a little compromise and creativity, they all can be managed on a reasonable budget. Let me show you what I've done, starting with the speakers. This is my mixing desk. The left and right speakers are the ones that I started with years ago. They're Yamaha HS8s. They have an 8-inch woofer. I like the way they sound. They're not super detailed, but they have a good balance in tonality. I added the center speaker later. It's the same model. I got it used. A point I want to make if you're trying this at home: I originally thought I could get away with using an HS5, the same model but a 5-inch woofer. It did not hold up. So I advise you strongly to make sure that all three of the front speakers are identical. Just recently I added these two speakers on the side. They're also HS8s, they just happen to be black. I also got them used. I think it's important that the sides match the front speakers as well. Under the desk there I have an inexpensive subwoofer I got for about $100. For rear speakers, I've got these Yamaha stage speakers. Now, Dolby recommends using the same speakers all around, and I didn't expect to be happy with these. I just used them because I had them already. But on their own, they have a nice balance tonally, not too thin and not too boomy. I've been listening with them for a while now, and it turns out that in most Atmos mixes, the rear wall is used for more diffuse sounds like reverb and delay, and sometimes lighter instruments like keyboards. I never feel like the immersive effect falls apart with these speakers the way it did when I used the HS5 for the center speaker in front. That's my experience anyway. Along those lines, these height speakers were originally desktop computer speakers, very inexpensive. They don't sound great on their own, but again, in the context of what typically comes out of the high channels, to my surprise, I don't feel an urgent need to replace them. Dolby even says that the height channels can be smaller than the others. The two height speakers in front are the same model. I was lucky enough to already own this seamless paper stand. It's used in photography. I'm also lucky to be in a room with a 9-foot ceiling. One cool thing about the stand is these ring collars that twist to lock the upright posts. It makes it easy to raise and lower the speakers to make any needed adjustments. Both stands have sandbags to keep them from tipping over. These back here are mounted to microphone stands, which is very clumsy. Also, they're too far back, being on top of the rear speakers. At some point, I might get a truss to solve that problem. It takes a while to go around and switch all the speakers on. So with a lot of extension cords and power strips, I've got a switch under the desk so I can turn all the speakers on or off at once. Another thing that saved money for me is that I already had an older USB interface with 8 inputs and 8 outputs, along with an auxiliary 8x8 converter that connects via optical. So what about speaker management? Well, instead of spending thousands of dollars on a box, I do it all with my DAW. These two channels here with the red faders, they're both output channels. This one is my 714 speaker array. So I can adjust the gain or mute it even right here. So this channel here is really the output channel. It's different than the Atmos mix, which is where the Dolby renderer is. The mix output is routed directly to the 714 output channel. I usually keep the Atmos mix at unity gain. In this setup, my stereo out goes to a pair of outputs that are not part of the 714 speaker array. These outputs are routed to a headphone jack on my interface. I can use it as a stereo fold down, but usually it's a binaural render. When I'm mixing in Atmos, I use this preset, which has the stereo out going to those outputs. And you'll notice that the left and right channels of my 7.1.4 are my regular left and right speakers. Now when I'm doing stereo mixing, I have a different preset, so I can easily change back and forth between Atmos mixing and stereo mixing just by loading different presets and not having to repatch cables or anything like that. But there's more to speaker management than volume control and routing. For quality results, it also involves calibration. That includes level matching, time correction, and EQ. You can buy a speaker management system that will do all of this for a lot of money, or you can use things that you already have at hand. The trade-off is mostly in convenience. One of the most important things to calibrate is timing. In order to be in phase, sounds from different speakers need to arrive at the listening position at the same time, even though the speakers are all different distances away. I made a video describing Andrew Sheps's method for calibrating timing manually. It requires measuring the delay from each speaker to a microphone in the sweet spot, then using a spreadsheet to calculate the delays needed for correction on each speaker. Once I have the corrected delays, I go to my 7.1.4 output channel, and I have a plugin as an insert on that output channel called Mixer Delay. This is a Nuendo feature, but I'm sure you can do this in any DAW. And I have different values here that I've entered previously. These are the different delay values that compensate for the delay in how long it takes the sound to reach my head. And I have this set as a preset so that I can instantiate the same plugin on the output channel of whichever project I'm working on and load my time values. Another important calibration is making sure that the loudness is the same from speaker to speaker. I use this decibel meter app, and I place it face up on a stand in the listening position, and then I send white noise from each speaker one at a time, and I just go to each speaker and adjust the gain so that the reading on the meter is the same for all the speakers. The third type of calibration is EQ. Personally, I think this is less important than time correction and level matching. Knowing that my speakers have different sonic characteristics anyway, I don't make EQ decisions in my mix based on these speakers. If I'm not sure an element needs EQ, I can pan it near other elements in the mix, usually in the front, so that I can compare them on the same speakers. If it sounds good there, then I know it will be fine wherever I pan it. You could also fold down to stereo and check the overall mix with headphones. So, that covers speaker management. The final cost barrier is being able to hear professional Atmos on your own speaker array. And this does require an Atmos-enabled receiver with at least 7.1.4 output. These units can be extremely expensive, but I found one for under $1,400 US. The Tone Winner AT300 works well and is less expensive, partly because it's not a name brand, but mostly because the outputs are all line level, so no speaker amps are needed. Technically, it's called a processor, not a receiver. But the question remains, how do you route the processor to your speakers without having to rewire or patch cables every time you switch? The answer again is to use the DAW. This is a very simple project. I have an input channel in 7.1.4 for the receiver. All the line outputs of the Atmos receiver go into these inputs. It's also saved as a preset. And of course I have my output, which goes to the 7.1.4 speaker array. Then I have this audio track called AVR, where the input is the 7.1.4 in and the output is the 7.1.4 out. When I put it in monitor mode, then I can hear all the receiver channels on my speakers. Your timing calibration can still be used because the receiver output is going through the same plugin. Another benefit of playing these mixes through the DAW is that you can easily solo and mute different channels. For example, it's very interesting to solo the height channels and hear what the mix engineer decided to put up there. Who can guess what this is? When you have the receiver, you need to be able to view the video output so that you can use the remote control and even watch videos and things like that. So I have a HDMI output from the receiver going into an input on this monitor. It's a secondary monitor. So all I have to do is switch it over And up comes my Amazon Fire TV, which I have a stick plugged into the back of the receiver. And now I can actually watch Netflix shows in surround, which is cool. But what I want to show now is I can go like this. Launch Tidal. And that will bring up the Tidal music subscription service where they have Atmos mixes. I think you have to pay a little extra for that. Once you are connected to the receiver has multiple inputs. Besides the Fire TV, you could use the Apple TV. But I also have a Blu-ray player, so I can watch movies with Atmos mixes. Bottom line, if you're a professional who is making good money doing Atmos mixes, then it's worth spending the money to get the best possible system. But if you're like me and you're just getting started, then you can cut back on certain things at first. Anyway, have fun. See you next time.